Hello, I'm Tobey Nelson, silly certified public horticulturist, coming to you from Venture Out Nursery on Whidbey Island, and today we're going to talk about grasses. There is a grass for just about every situation you might have in a garden or landscape. And the reason is that grasses are designed by nature to be keepers of the soil. Their roots grow deep into the soil, hold it in place. Their blades decompose quickly, so they build soil up really nicely. So nature's designed one for every spot where you might garden. Sun, shade, moist, dry, we've got a grass for that. So we're going to talk about that today. Reasons that people like to use grasses in their garden is for texture, for motion, for the rustling sounds of the leaves. And also clearly for leaf color, right? There's so much interest in the leaves. And we do think of grasses as a foliage plant, but really they also have interesting flowers. So right now we have the flowers on this Calamagrostis Karl Forster. They're just beginning. So they're skinny and narrow. And then as they open, they become much more feathery. And then as they age, this one is broken, but they'll become golden. And so they really bring seasons of interest, just like any other flower would. And there's another one with excellent little eyelashy flowers here. So, you know, grasses are quite interesting. So let's meet some of these grasses. I'm going to start with the tall grasses. So probably the most commonly recognized tall grasses are the Miscanthus group. Most of them get large, but there are short ones that have been developed. So this is a variegated form. We have a short version of the green and gold one. This one is called Gold Breeze. So it stays short, but it gets these golden bars. And then we have Miscanthus gracilis, which has a very skinny, fine textured leaf. As we are talking about the flowers of grasses, we can also talk about the timing. And so Miscanthus are a late summer to fall flowering grass, versus another very commonly used grass is Calamagrostis Karl Forster. And these are very commonly used in landscape projects because they're very vertical and narrow. So the grass clump stays straight and the flower plumes stay straight. Whereas with the Miscanthus, they're much more of an arching fountain shape. And clearly from this assortment here, we can see that Calamagrostis flowers a little earlier than the Miscanthus will. So if you're designing with many grasses, you may think not just about the leaves, but also the timing of the flowers. Another tall grass that I really like because her edges are soft, she doesn't bite, is the panicum or the switchgrass. And these are common in bluish tones, but they also come in reds and purples. And they're also a late summer or fall flowering grass. Now, all of these plants are adapted to dry. The Miscanthus will take the most drought. Calamagrostis takes a fair bit of drought. Panicum likes a little bit of water, but she's pretty drought hardy once established. So these are all great for full sun and drier conditions. Now we'll talk about some of the shorter grasses, and I'm just going to talk about them in no particular order. So this is Imperata, or Japanese bloodgrass, and you can see why. The tips on this red barren cultivar are a beautiful red. This grass is a bit of a runner, so it's great used where you want it to form a colony, and it definitely needs moist sun and moist sun. Well, it likes moist sun. It likes moist soil, and it will take full sun, and really full sun if it has abundant water. It's great for the edge of an actual pond where its toes will sit in the moisture, and come fall it blazes. Something all the grasses I have talked about have in common so far is that these are deciduous grasses. So they're going to flower in the fall, and then their leaves will begin to die. Many of them will stay standing for the winter, and it's excellent habitat for birds. The birds love to land on the grass stalks and peck at the seeds in the garden. I love to leave my deciduous grasses standing over the winter for that reason. And then round about February, cut them back. And I'm getting distracted from introducing the grasses, so we'll talk about maintenance a little bit at the end. So this, however, is an evergreen grass. So this is a sedge, and most of the sedges I'm going to show you today are in fact evergreen grasses, and we don't cut them back. So this is one from the Evercolor family, and this is called Everest. So this is a great grass for moist sun or shade. So the more moisture it has, the more sun it will take, and it can take also shade, but it would like it a little drier in the shade or it'll rot. The blue fescues are lovely, and this is boulder blue, and look at that foliage color. It's great. Lots of sun, very dry once established, and it's starting to flower with its little tawny flowers. This guy just stays kind of between knee and ankle tall in the garden. It doesn't get very big, so it's great for the front of the border. I've seen grasses used as hedge substitutes. So if you'd like to capture the structured feeling of a formal garden without the rigidity of a clipped hedge, try a little grass clump. How fun would that be? A grass that's very popular for people who are looking for a tawny color and a very soft, feathery feeling is the Mexican feathergrass. Once it was called Stipa tenuissima, now it's Nacella tenuissima. This is soft and feathery and waves beautifully, and it does self-sow, so it's great when you want to make big drifts of this grass. I don't recommend planting this over like a paver driveway or anything like that, because the seeds will get into the cracks of the paver and germinate and make you positively nuts. But great for wind, drought, very well adapted to the beach. If you garden at the beach, takes that salt spray, as does the blue fescue very nicely, and the miscanthus grasses. A grass that is prized in the shade for its luminous, soft, graceful texture is the Japanese forest grass. So this is probably one of the most popular ones, Aureola, which has the yellow leaf with that green stripe, but they do come in an all yellow, in a yellow with red tips, or in all green. But the Hakanakloas are great for shade. They'd like a little moisture to get established. They'll take a surprising amount of drought, but they really would do best with some supplemental moisture in the summer, and they definitely need that shade. They are also soft and tender, and apparently they're quite juicy and succulent when they're young. So if you do garden with rabbits, then you want to protect this as it's first emerging in the spring. It's also a deciduous grass. Once it grows up, you can remove the protection, and the rabbits should leave it alone, and the deer. But those tender young tips are too irresistible from wildlife and cats and dogs. So that's just something to know. I like to use a tomato cage with a little wrap of poultry netting, and that keeps the animals at bay, and it's easily removed and stored for next spring. You can bring some more dramatic color to the garden with some of these grasses. So this is a cute little one called Uncinia. Look at that flame color. She only gets to be about 1 foot tall and 1 foot wide. And in our zone B-ish, 7B-ish climate, she's more likely to be an annual than a perennial. Definitely wants some moisture. And yeah, because she's more likely to be an annual, we can think of her as deciduous. Another fun annual grass in our climate, but definitely perennial once you get past about 8B, is this Pennisetum. There's so many Pennisetums that bring us great low-growing grassy texture and color. This red one just happens to be deciduous, but there's lots of them that are perennial. And this coarse texture is really fun for a tropical feeling. Great in pots. Most grasses are great in pots, but especially these annual grasses are great. Now this has a grassy texture, but it isn't in fact a grass. So not every grass looking thing is a grass, but we're going to talk about it today anyway. This is called black mondo grass, and it's actually a member of the lily family. You can see the difference in the flower spike a little bit, and if these were open, you'd really be able to tell the difference. But this leathery evergreen grass is loved for, I would say like morning sun or shade and average moisture. And this black grass is great for contrasting with other brighter color foliages. It really makes a plant combination pop. And it's also really fun in pots. I couldn't not talk about this plant, who I actually don't know how to pronounce its Latin name, Botellia or maybe something like that, but it's grama grass, very fine textured, it's deciduous, but look at these little eyelashy blooms. They're so charming and different. I really love them. So this is great in the front of the border if you want a real meadowy feeling and to capture a lot of movement. It really wiggles in the wind and makes a fun little dance. The last couple of grasses on the cart. This one is Carex Ice Dance, and this is an evergreen grass for moist sun or shade. It'll take dry, but it tends to get these sort of brown tips in the dry, so it's better with moisture. And this plant is definitely one that makes a colony and runs. So it's an excellent ground cover or slope holder. Don't plant it if it doesn't have room to travel. But if you need a big patch of something, this is a great plant to use. Evergreen, always that green and white. And then back to our sedges, our carexes. I love the bronze carex grass. This is a plant people either love or hate because it's orange or brown, and a lot of people think it looks dead. I think it has great color. And I love its soft arching shape. It's beautiful in the front of the garden in little drifts. It's pretty well behaved if you take its seed heads off. So this one is going to seed, and those seeds will germinate and sprout. But slightly before the seeds are ready to germinate, you can just pull its hairs right out. And so all you have to do to deadhead this plant is give it a little comb. It doesn't hurt at all. You can do it without gloves on. It's nice and easy. And then you've solved any problem of it being a little weedy friend, and you get to have this beautiful, beautiful foliage color in your garden. So those are the grasses. We get a lot of questions about how do I maintain the grasses. So here's the thing. I'm going to walk in front of the camera again. My favorite tool for cutting back grasses to save your hand and save carpal tunnel is this little sickle, my Japanese sickle. So when you have a deciduous grass that's gone dead and you're tired of it, then you can just, I'm not going to cut this grass because of course we want to sell it, but you just grab it by a little ponytail handful and you just and slice it right off. It's so easy. It makes fast, easy work of it, and you don't have this constant repetitive motion of using your pruners. It's indispensable. It's also great for cutting back ferns and any kind of evergreen perennial that needs a little refreshing, or deciduous perennial. So the time to cut back your grasses is basically when you're tired of them. So you can leave them standing dead through the winter and into February, maybe early March. When you start to see new shoots waking up at the bottom of the grass clump, that's when you want to cut them off so you can get the dead out of the way of the new emerging grass. And that's also when you want to feed your grasses. So just like people fertilize lawns, ornamental grasses can use a little fertilizing every once in a while. They just need a little nitrogen. A little fish emulsion is fine, or a good sort of all-purpose organic starter granular kind of fertilizer is also great. They're hungry feeders, so you can feed if you want big bodacious clumps. But the trick to keeping your grasses from flopping is to not overfeed and not overwater. So especially these large, tall guys that you want for height, that are drought tolerant, grow them lean and they'll stand up more sturdy. You don't have to stake them and cage them. So little tough love for these guys is best to keep them looking full and sturdy. So I encourage you to visit your local nursery, maybe even venture out nursery, and buy some grasses and play. They're really fun to include in your garden. Thanks for watching.